One of the biggest controversies to hit collectors that like to go after Spider-Man stuff like myself was how so many action figures centered around Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man from No Way Home had a bit of licensing issues, and that was coming from virtually every company: Marvel Legends, Hot Toys, and now Figuarts. Let's take a look and see if the issue with the licensing played a part in the actual quality of the figure. Packaging comes in the same aesthetic as that of Tobey's and Tom's, but it's funny that it retains the same dimensions despite having lesser accessories and lesser things packed in with it. So let's break down exactly what comes inside and whether or not it is worthy of that $80 price tag, because that's one of the things that Figuarts kind of compromised on was the value. They managed to take about $10 or $15 off the price tag to compensate for the licensing issue that they were facing, which is the lack of an unmasked head due to some problems with the likeness of Andrew Garfield. It's kind of up in the air as to whether or not it was him not wanting to give out his likeness or his agency or something with Marvel. I don't know. Who knows? It's all in a very gray area. So we're not going to have any unmasked heads. No separate masked pieces to make it look like he's holding his mask, nothing like that. No different expressions. And because of that, I'm going to be tackling this review slightly different, a little more akin to my Hot Toys reviews, where I like to cover some of the basic accessories first before getting to the main figure and then tackling accessories that are usually unique. Since that's probably already kind of out of the way for us since they weren't able to pack unique accessories, let's get the brunt work out of the way. He is still Spider-Man at the end of the day, so he's going to have a variety of hand accessories. You're going to have the web spinning hands, the holding hands, the stretched out wall crawling hands. I guess you could argue the slightly open, kind of relaxed-ish hands. They're somewhere kind of in the middle. I would even make the argument that these are the hands that he had when he put them on his head. I'm almost tempted to make the argument that these are the hands that he was using to try to calm down Ned's grandma when he peeped through the portal. So you could make that argument that these are those. So there's a slight little variation of that gesture. And he comes with the pointing hands, if I could find them here. Here you are. You have the pointing hands. I'm a little bothered by how angled the actual index finger is. I wish it was a little bit on the straighter side, so it's slightly warped on mine, on both, honestly. So I don't think that this is just an accidental thing. It might have been just the way that they were sculpted. So a little bit straighter would have been nicer, but still, their inclusion, of course, lends to the infamous meme, so that's definitely going to take part in the final B-roll. And then the relaxed hands, which are actually on the figure itself, so we'll get to those momentarily. And to fit inside of the wrists, apart from the hands, when you take them off and replace them, you're going to have your standard web accessories. You're going to have the short ones, the slightly medium elongated ones, still retaining the hoop here at the end so you can fit them into the wrist peg, and then the very large slightly L-shaped one right here to kind of put him inside dynamic posing or make it look like he's swinging. They're slightly more opaque than that of Tobey's. Tobey's is completely translucent, and I love that they did retain a little bit of that screen accuracy with the webbing, because this is technically manufactured. We had this discussion in No Way Home, and I love that Figuarts was still able to carry that into their versions of the figures, where you have this slightly opaque but still somewhat translucent webbing inside of the web accessories that lends to the background, the lore that he has web shooters. Tom has web shooters, but Tobey doesn't. Tobey can excrete webbing out of his body, and therefore, I guess you would make the argument they're much more pure, and because of that, Tobey's accessories, or web accessories at least, are much more translucent and clearer than that of Tom and Andrew's. So I do think that that's an interesting little detail that I do pay respect to Figuarts keeping in line with. But then there we go. You have the web accessories, you have the different assortment of hands. That's really about it for accessories. So it really does come down to the figure itself to hold its own weight and really deliver on why it is that he exactly is charged $80. Here comes Andrew's Peter Parker / The Amazing Spider-Man. And right off the bat, you can see that an awful lot of that bow-leggedness that Figuarts still, for some weird reason, put on Tobey is still carried here. So I don't understand what is happening there. I almost want to argue that they reutilized some sculpting with Tobey's legs here within Andrew's themselves, because they're pretty much verbatim the same exact legs, especially, like I said, with the bow-leggedness. If it was just one, I would argue that maybe it's warping due to the way that it was packaged, so far and so on and so forth. but it's both of them, and they're, like I said, angled in an opposite way, where I'm like, why are their legs sculpted in this manner? Aside from that, though, it's not a bad looking piece, because you can see that they were able to replicate the costume pretty much one-to-one to the way that it appeared not only in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but also in No Way Home. A definite good call on the creators and the writers of No Way Home, because I think we can all be in agreement that this is one of the finer Spider-Man suits ever. I'm sorry if any of you are huge fans of the Amazing Spider-Man. I don't like those lenses. I don't like that the red part right here just ends right here and there's no exact belt. I love the bigger eyes, the Oakley eyes that still have white within them instead of that gold whatever sunglass material he had in the original. And I know a lot of people are going to say that was his original suit. He made it himself. He was able to refine it here. Yeah. But now we're here, and we can't go back to that suit. So to see that not only the No Way Home movie, Figuarts, and Hot Toys were able to give reissues to those models or that suit of that iteration is good to see. With that said, it looks like an awful lot of those, again, licensing issues had to kind of paint these companies in a corner where they just had to make some things just kind of happen. Because with Hot Toys, that's a whole different beast. That's a whole different video. Hopefully I'll get to it once I have my hands on that figure. With Figuarts here, I would overall say that they were able to capture an awful lot of the blue and the spider symbols very accurately and very nicely in this scale. I love the texturing that's happening with the blue. I love the exact shading of blue that they utilized. And then when it comes to those elongated spiders on the front and back, they're glossy, they're reflective, while at the same time still looking like they're pretty much sculpted onto the figure rather than painted. And because of that, I think this is the first time I'm going to say it, I prefer the back symbol better than the front symbol. There's something about the front symbol that just looks like it gets kind of lost in the webbing. And I understand that the webbing is supposed to be much darker and black than that of, say, Tobey's, because that's a much more reflective kind of jet black that's being reflective because of the texture they're using. Here, it's actually much more embedded into the material of the suit, and it looks like they were able to make that come alive a little better in figure form. So by nature, the spider on the back, I think, just pops a little better. It has the same exact design as the one that you see from the very first shot of Amazing Spider-Man 2 when he's free-falling, and so to see it come alive here in SH Figuarts form, very cool to see. We then get to one of my first gripes that, again, I know that some of you are going to come to the defense, and I'm sorry. I don't like how reflective the red is. I much would have preferred the muted look that not only he had in No Way Home, because here's the thing. Here's where we can kind of split hairs a little bit. The way that the red is reflective here on the patterning, wherever there is red on the SH Figuarts, is faithful to how he looked like in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Not exactly one-to-one the way he was in No Way Home. I feel like they downplayed the reflectiveness in No Way Home when they brought back that suit. And frankly, I prefer that. I like that it's got less sheen. If you're going to keep sheen, just keep it on the symbols and maybe the eyes, of course. But once we get to the red, I feel like it's just a little bit distracting and just makes either the suit look too Power Ranger-y or the figures, in part, make him look a little too toyish. And I know it's an action figure or whatever. I'm done with that argument. I just would have liked something that's a bit more screen accurate, and I feel like that reflective covering that they added doesn't do any favors, and it still carries on over to the hand accessories we just covered. They're very reflective, very hard to lose because you can kind of just shine a light and see them right off the bat, but maybe it just kind of teeters on the line of preference, and I liked it better when it looked like in No Way Home, much more muted to how it was. If you don't believe me, look back to the scene when they're talking about the webbing coming out of their bodies, or the way that Tobey's able to shoot out his webbing, when it leads to the shot that was then leaked prior to the release of the film of Andrew holding onto that pipe. Just look at the suit. It still looks like an awesome suit, but the red is much more played down, and I feel like here, they just made it way too reflective around the boot area, around the arms, and of course, around the chest, which is a shame because the way that this is all sculpted is actually done fairly well. It then draws attention to my next big problem. It is that head sculpt. I'm sorry, not only do we have the coating of the red being just too reflective, but god damn, I hate this head. I'm sorry, I winced in disgust when I pulled him out of the box. I'm like, wait a minute. Is it just me, or did the pictures not make him look so goddamn bulbous? Just look at this thing. Look at how bulby. it looks like if these are where the eyes are supposed to be placed, how big exactly is his mouth? And I understand that Andrew himself, handsome fellow, does have a little bit of a big head, especially when he does floof off his hair in a very pompadour style like he tends to do. But I don't remember his head looking this alien. I'm sorry. There's just so many dimensions, so many things wrong just looking at this head that I look at and I go, ew, why does it look like that? Especially from the side when you notice that you have the neck piece separated there in the very Figuarts trademark. But then it just kind of cuts off right here and it keeps on going. And there's just something about the proportioning of that head that, again, just looks way too alien. Looks in any kind of way that I position it, it still looks ugly. It still has this look that just attracts my eye and not necessarily in the most positive light. And here's how you know I'm not bullshitting, because similar to Toby, when I pulled him out of the box and he was in this neutral position, I looked at some of the proportions and I'm like, yeah, I understand that Andrew was a much lankier guy. There's still something very stubby looking about the legs, similar to that of Toby. So because of that, I'm like, all right, maybe this is starting to turn into a Figuarts thing where maybe if it's a character that is based on a real life actor or real life character that was portrayed live action, maybe they have a problem adapting those body proportions, because I didn't really have this much of a problem with the Figuarts Across the Spider-Verse characters, the Miles and Gwen that I covered. Maybe the Miles arms are a little too long, but aside from that, they're pretty faithful and screen accurate. So here, there was a little bit of that pudginess. He is a little lankier on the top torso, so I do appreciate that. But then the legs, I feel like I said, they just kind of copied and pasted Toby's. But then I told myself, let's take a step back, take a breather, and actually start posing the figure and see if maybe through dynamic posing and through the articulation, can those body parts start to feel a bit more fluid, a bit more natural. So that's where we have to tackle the articulation. And I'm gonna, again, do things a little bit differently and just skip right on to the arms, because we'll come back to the head momentarily. Much like with Toby, you have a variety of joints happening on the top arms. You're able to rotate on the ball joint vertically 360 and extend to the sides at about a 180. Doesn't really go beyond there like Miles, but of course he's not an animated character, so this feels kind of natural. And then you do have the butterfly joint inside that is able to swivel and move the arm forwards and backwards right there, and that hinge that extends the shoulder to kind of give him like a shrugging or slightly stretched out kind of look to his shoulders. Then you do have, you can see right there, a bicep separation. I don't know what to make of this joint, because it's not necessarily a joint, but rather a cylindrical bicep piece that's wrapping the joint itself. So when you rotate this piece, you can actually see that it's rotating separately from the arm. So to really get rotation happening on the bicep, you actually have to grab it from the elbow. But do be careful, because you can hear that mine is already squeaking on the left joint. It's a bit more generous on the right. You can fully rotate left and right the bicep on my right one, so just be careful with those joints. And I did notice the comments from the Across the Spider-Verse review about putting oil or putting it in soap water. I'll definitely do an awful lot of that for not just Andrew here, but also the Miles and Gwen from Figuarts, as well as the Toby. But I'll do so when they become much more readily available and I have the cash in hand, because I do not want to be doing something to the figure that could potentially compromise it, screw it up, and then I have to go and buy another one. So once there's, like Peter B. Parker said in Into the Spider-Verse, once I'm a bit more liquid, then I'll get it, or do that kind of method to fix my figures. Then when we get to the elbows, you do have two joints that are fully able to bend all the way up, although it starts to tighten up a little bit once you kind of start squishing on the weenus, if you want to call it that, right about right there. And then the wrist joint is able to allow the hand to rotate 360 as well as pivot inwards and outwards. Pretty standard issue. Thankfully, unlike Toby or even Miles, the torso joints are a little bit more generous this time around. You have the mid-torso cut right there that is able to have the top part of the body rotate left and right. And even though there's a little bit of squeaking that you can hear right there, it definitely feels a lot better than that of Toby's or Miles, because you don't have too much of the squeakiness. Much of the squeakiness is found in the arms, not so much in the torso. That one's actually able to flex a little better. Still, once the opportunity presents itself, I'll try to see if I could add that oil or that soap water. You are, however, able to extend the torso towards the back like so, and then crunch inwards right about right there. And the waist, though it's not able to rotate, allows further crunching towards the front and extension towards the back, so you are able to put him in a variety of poses where it looks like he's either web spinning or flying through the air, kind of like he is in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Just be careful that once you kind of crunch towards the front, you kind of ruin a little bit of the illusion with that cut stretching and then allowing you to see the internals and the mechanisms of the figure itself right about right there. So do be careful. Then when we get to the top legs, you have, of course, all this different paneling right here. Pretty subjective as to whether or not you like that, because this does allow there to be a butt piece that you can kind of move inwards and outwards to allow different kinds of natural looks depending on where the legs are. But you are able to move the leg forward about that far, towards the back about that far. So that's obviously why those pieces are there. And then you have a cylindrical piece on the inside that allows extension almost at the 180, but not quite. It kind of stops just short of that, right about right there. Thigh swivels that are right below that allow both legs to rotate left and right. Not about a 360 because it starts to interfere with itself, but it is happening there. Two joints at the knees that are fully able to bend all the way up, and unlike the elbows, they don't really have any kind of resistance when you get towards the top, so that's good to see. They feel very flush and fluid. No oil needed there. And despite the bow-leggedness that is happening here, I don't know why it's sculpted that way. You do have some pretty generous ankles that do have these guardrail pieces, kind of similar to that of Tobey's, but they do allow the foot to rotate downwards or flip downwards like so, move upwards like that, and then fully rotate at the top of the ball joint 360 degrees, and it feels pretty good. Never feels like it's gonna snap or do anything weird like that. And there's even a little bit of pivoting right about right there, so it does allow a little bit of balancing, especially again with the bow-leggedness, to maybe make it look a little bit more natural if you have the legs extended or outwards towards like that, kind of like the way that Andrew's Spider-Man likes to pose. And there are toesies, but they're not necessarily the most generous. They do flip, I think, a little higher than that of Tobey's, but not the most realized toes that I've ever seen on a Figuarts, but they are there. So with those out of the way, we got to tackle the head, because the head articulation is actually quite standard issue. You have the neck joint that is separated from the top shoulders and the head itself, so you technically have two joints. One at the top that is able to rotate 360 without no problem, and then the one at the bottom that is able to incline and bend forwards about that far and backwards about that far. That does start to show off a little bit of a gap right there, so it does kind of show a little bit of the inside. Be careful, and very good tilting from side to side. But here's the thing, no matter how I move this goddamn joint, you can see his head is still bothering me. All the other parts of the body that I've been able to bend with the articulation presented, Your Honor, makes it at least look kind of cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I were to just kind of futz around with the figure, put him in a dynamic way to make it look like maybe he's leaping, jumping, he's taunting a lizard, he's taunting Electro, like, Max, buddy, old pal, it's been a while. Hold on, let me see if I can do that pose. Like, where he goes like, hey, it's been a while. Like that. Look at that. It actually looks kind of cool. All that stuff that I was talking about, the lankiness, that I was talking about the bow-leggedness, all that stuff, it gets kind of lost. I actually don't see it anymore. But I still see the bulbiness of that head. He looks like the aliens from Attack of the Clones. Welcome, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We've been expecting you. Come on. I'm sorry, but for Figuarts, especially for a figure that you retroactively ended up delaying because you had to cut back on the unmasked heads, I almost feel kind of glad you didn't throw in those masked heads, because imagine that Mr. Bean Andrew head on this body with that neck. Jesus Christ. And to drive that point a little bit better across, let's bring in the man I've been referring to a number of times already in this video. I would figure, if I keep talking about Tobey, we gotta showcase him right next to the Andrew Figuarts. And you can see that the height is definitely captured there very faithfully. Andrew by default is much taller than Tobey's, and we saw that plainly on screen. So they captured that part right. And the proportioning on Tobey, I'm still pretty amazed by the way that they were able to capture what is technically a middle-aged Tobey as Spider-Man. Andrew here, however, it looks like they kind of took the same legs, gave him the slightly brighter shade of blue, and of course made sure to sculpt it and pattern it as far as the texture is concerned, the way that it's supposed to look like for the Amazing Spider-Man 2 costume. But everything else, I don't know. There's just something kind of off about the proportioning that at least looks a little better once you get to the positioning and the articulation and the variety of poses to make them look a little bit more dynamic. But then with my reservations about the reflectiveness of the red that is happening here, along with that head sculpt. Look at that head sculpt and then look at Tobey's. Look at the way that they were able to capture a much more natural looking head that feels like it's organically underneath that mask. That looks like Tobey's Spider-Man. That looks like Andrew's Spider-Man mask on an alien's head. I'm sorry, maybe they made the neck piece a little too long. Maybe they undercut the chin a little bit. Maybe it looks like he's Spider-Man. I don't know. I really don't understand what is happening. And then when it comes to, again, that texturing and the paint applications behind that red, look at the muted look on the red parts of Tobey's suit. Maybe it's not the same shade of red that is, maybe keep that shade of red, but then that reflectiveness or muted, or lack thereof, the muted nature of this, but with that shade of red. Combine those together, give it a brand new head sculpt. Maybe there's a custom person out there who is able to give us a custom head sculpt to pop on there that, Figuarts was not able to do due to licensing issues, and we would have had a winner. And for $80, I understand that they cut a little bit on the price to make sure that they can compensate that. But then on the side, we just get the standard issue stuff that you always expect a Spider-Man figure, not just from Figuarts, not just from Hot Toys, and Hot Toys, again, is a different beast, but keeping it to this scale, Mafex, Figuarts, Marvel Legends, it's still the same stuff. So even if you're not able to get the head rights to, well, that sounds weird, but the likeness rights to that of Andrew's, okay, you can't do the alternate head sculpt. Can you throw in a different accessory? He did have that cure piece that he was trying to use on Lizard. Maybe throw that in. Maybe throw in the lab coat. That way you're able to pop off the arms and pop on some lab coat arms. That way you could wrap it around. I'm sorry, but I would have paid the standard price that it was, whether it be $90, $95, almost $100, just like with Tobey, and have gotten those extra value pieces to make Andrew unique, just like the Tom Holland final integrated suit, whether it be the standard integrated suit that was released a while back, or the final battle version that comes with the battle damaged head sculpt with the scratches and the blood marks, or with that little Doctor Strange cubicle. They did something. This guy kind of feels a little crapped out, and even with the discounted price of $80, I'm not sure if that's not 100% worth it. Does that mean that he's a bad figure? Of course not. There's still some quality found behind the articulation, the posability, the way that some of the patterning on the blue as well as the actual quality you get from the plastic works. I just wish, like I said, a little bit of that squeakiness could be refined. So I would argue that if you could find this guy for about somewhere between $65 to $75 or $70, around there, because I've seen Figuarts get discounted to those prices. I've seen a Doctor Strange Figuarts from Multiverse of Madness go for like $50. If you could find it around that price range, I would say Andrew's the definitive pickup. But as it stands, it's a pretty good figure, but maybe not the one that should be high on the priority if you are in fact collecting all three Spider-Man for No Way Home from this brand. And as such, I would have to give it a 7 out of 10. I still appreciate that he's in my collection, and to see that he is one of the higher quality Andrews that we're going to get in a while, especially if you're not down to get the No Way Home 3-pack that is now being scalped all over the place. Now that that No Way Home 3-pack from Marvel Legends is pretty much going for about $130, $140, I would say take that money, prioritize it on Tobey first, because he is still the bar. He is still the standard of what to expect from Figuarts. So you can kind of sense why it is that I'm a little disappointed at Andrew coming with the shortcomings of the accessories that, again, I understand there were licensing issues, but still, I just came up with two solutions right now. Either the cure piece, maybe a lab coat, I don't know. There would have been something. My initial reaction was going to be extra lenses to give him different expressions, but this isn't Spider-Verse. He's not able to do that in the live action. So I'm like, all right, cure piece, lab coat. There you go. I'm rambling at this point. That's pretty much where I stand. I would say prioritize your money towards Tobey because he is most definitely worth the $90. So much so that if I end up breaking this guy because I'm trying to fix the arm, I will double dip and get it again. Andrew, however, could potentially wait. I would even say that maybe Tom, the final battle version that comes with the added stuff, would probably be suited better for that extra cash you have. And then lastly, get Andrew here to complete the trifecta of Spider-Man. Oh, and fisted hands. I just now noticed. Tobey's got fisted hands. Andrew, and yes, the Across the Spider-Verse figures, I failed to mention this in my review, didn't come with any fisted hands, and it looks like that trend carried on over to Andrew, and I don't understand why, because these guys were in the same kind of production window. What's with the fist hands going out of style for Figuarts? I mean, come on. I simply don't understand, and that would have been an even bigger addition that probably would have cost next to nothing to just throw in amongst these hands. I don't know what gives. If you guys still feel compelled to pick up your own Figuarts No Way Home Andrew Amazing Spider-Man figure, there is going to be affiliate links in the description that you guys can use to help out the channel in the process and still get your own shipped. Otherwise, guys, if you enjoyed my review, hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down. Now that we got these two guys, I mean, how can I not get Tom? I'm going to be getting Tom, especially the final battle version, comparing next to these two guys, and then finally complete the trilogy of Figuarts No Way Home reviews, and finally dictate whether or not this was the right call to do versus getting the Marvel Legends 3-pack, and see whether or not I was wrong and I have to eat crow. And if you guys want to stick around for that video, make sure to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and as always, stay humble. I'll see you later. I'm sure we've all been in the theater catching the latest superhero flick, but a lot of those movies recently have been kind of long, and after a while that bulky wallet starts to leave a crater on the dark side of the moon. Well, your cheeks have been saved by Exter. I've partnered with them to showcase some of the sleek, elegant wallets that are currently available anywhere right now. About half the size of your typical wallet while still having enough space for all of your cards. They keep them protected with durable materials such as vegan Italian leather or space-grade aluminum, and also keeps them secure from skimmers. These are some trying times we're in, and you can never be too careful. So Exter makes sure to line their wallets up with RFID protection, but best of all, you can do this. Pressing one button grants immediate access to all of your cards in an instant, so the next time you take out your card at the exact moment you missed out on that new exclusive figure pre-order, take comfort in knowing that the card is safe, secure, and comes out of an Exter wallet. And you can get yours too by using the link in the description, and while you're checking that out, get a whopping 25% off your order when you check out using that link or typing in my promo code DarkSpiderDavid. I want to thank Exter for sponsoring this video.